Hello world, this is Lisa Friedrichsen, your friend and professor from Johnson County Community College. And in this short screencast, we're going to go over the GPA calculator one last time using constructs we learned in Chapter 5, working with a document object model. Here's my website. I've restyled the links to the YouTubes in red so they're a little bit clearer from the links to other items. And if you come into my Web 114 JavaScript 1 link, you will find all the YouTubes for all the chapters. And we're in this section right here, reviewing with our web page for GPA calculator examples. Let's go right to the examples, and if you've been following along, you know that I've created little exercises for you to calculate your GPA using the constructs in each chapter. You simply click on the instruction if you need a little help to see the solution. And the HTML is in blue and the JavaScript is in red. We have worked our way all the way down to Chapter 5, working with a document object model. And in this last example, we'll write a function that does all the same things that our code was doing before, except that instead of pre-coding the input boxes, we're going to calculate those on the fly and let JavaScript create the input text boxes needed so that every time I run this, I can calculate it on the exact number of classes I've taken. For example, this first time I'll just put 2 into my input box, create input boxes, and this is the new functionality that I've created in this example. The HTML to create the input box is in blue, and the only HTML I have here is a div that's called insert input boxes. These input boxes and labels were created with JavaScript learned from Chapter 5. So let's see how that works. So if I put in a 3-credit class and I got an A, and I take another 3-credit class and I get a B, and calculate my GPA, number 16, my grade point after 2 classes is 3.5. If I refresh this page and put in a different number of classes and create input boxes, I'm going to get the number of input boxes for the number of classes specified in this input. So the calculation of the grade point really isn't much different. GPA 16 is not going to be a whole lot different than it was from GPA 15 and 14. But the source of the data and creating these input boxes is all brand new. When I click the Create Input Boxes button, I have an event listener that's listening for the Create Input Boxes function. That function sets several variables. Let's look at a couple closely. The insertion point is set to document get element by ID insert input boxes. And I have a div sitting here that's called insert input boxes. I set that to my insertion point variable. The num variable is the number from this input box. Number of classes, its value. Then I declared 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 empty arrays. And they relate to the 7 nodes that I need to both create and then attach for every line, and in this case for 3 different lines because I want to calculate my grade point for 3 different classes. The 7 nodes are the label element that creates this label, the text node that goes in the label, and then the input box itself. So there's 3 nodes that have to be created and appended to get this credits label as well as the input box. Similarly, there's 3 more nodes that have to be created and appended to get the grade label and text and the grade input box. And then there's a 7th invisible element that I'm creating here, which is a line break. And that's what these 7 variables stand for. Then I go through this loop from I equals 0 to I is less than num. So given my num value is 3 times, it's going to go through the loop 3 times, 0, 1, and 2. And in each case, I have to create a new label element and then set its for property because I want that label to go for the input box. And then at the insertion point, which is right here at the div, I need to append that node. That's what these statements are doing. They're creating the label element, setting a for attribute, and then appending that same element to the page. For the text, I have to create a text node. I want that text to be credits : space. And then I have to append it to the insertion point. To get the credit input box, I, again, create the element first, and then I set its attributes. The type, the min, the max, its ID, its class name, and this is kind of an interesting thing. All the other HTML attributes you can set as just dot properties with the same name in JavaScript. But the class attribute in HTML is the class name property in JavaScript. That's one anomaly because the word class is a reserved word in so many different languages. And then we have to append the input box. So I have all of this code to create the label, to create the text node, and to create the input box. Then I go through that same process with those 3 nodes for the grade. I have to create the grade label, I have to append it, then I have to create the text node with the word grade to put in the label and append that at the insertion point. I also have to create an input box for the grade, this time the text, I set its size to 2, and again I have to give it an ID for that then to work properly in my next function, GPA 16, which is basically a repeat of function GPA 15, only using 16 that I did at the end of chapter 5. This is the secret sauce for creating HTML elements. You have to create the element, set its attributes using JavaScript properties, and then you have to append it. If that node is a paragraph, a label, an H1 and H2, then you're going to have to create the text for that element using createTextNode method in JavaScript. This has been a lot of fun. I thank you for indulging me to go through all these different exercises. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, I encourage you just to start at the top and go through these examples one at a time. I tried really hard to only take one step at a time as I went through the examples. Thank you and have a great day.